Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Take Back My Brain. I'm your host, Laurie Hammer, and today we are definitely deviating from our usual health topics and brain talk to talk about a matter that's very critical to our country at this moment. And so this is the critical side, what I want to say, what am I trying to say? See, I need a little brain energy today. The common sense side of what we need to talk about on Take Back My Brain. So I have a very special guest. I'm very honored and excited that he's here with us today to talk about this topic. And his name is Chris Harris. He is a retired Border Patrol agent. And so, yes, we're probably going to talk politics. And yes, we're going to talk about the border. And this is just vital to what's going on in our country right now. So thank you, Chris, for being here. I appreciate you more than you know.
Laurie, thank you for having me on the show and let me talk about what I think is a very important issue for Americans. Let me just set the stage. I stay within my wheelhouse, and that's border security and how it relates to national security and even local security, your community, your safety. I spent 36 years in law enforcement. I started at the ripe old age of 18 in New York as a New York State correction officer at a fun little place called Sing Sing. I realized how much that job sucked, and I became a police officer in New York and then a detective. I went to the Treasury Department as a federal police officer, and then I went to the Border Patrol in 96, 97 as a federal agent. And that was under Bill Clinton. He actually hired a lot of Border Patrol agents. So kudos to him for that very limited thing.
Yeah.
So I spent almost 22 years as a federal agent with U.S. Border Patrol. I was also a union official for National Border Patrol Council, the local out here in San Diego. I was an elected official, and I was also appointed as Director of Legislative and Political Affairs. So I spent a lot of time in D.C., meeting with senators and congressmen, testifying and other things, lobbying for the Border Patrol and the men and women of the Border Patrol.
Wow.
So I've kept up with it. I still go to the border. I bring people down to the border. I still do media. I do speaking engagements about this. I still have bosses that'll call me and tell me things that are going on that they can't say to the American media or to any media. So sure. I hope people understand that I kind of know what I'm talking about when I talk about the border. And that's all I'm going to talk about. If somebody asks me stuff at speaking engagements about like abortion or Second Amendment, I have my own values, but I don't speak about it because I'm not an expert on it. So that's where I'm going to go with this. You mentioned about politics. What I've always said was I don't think this should be partisan. I don't even think it should be bipartisan.
It shouldn't be an
nonpartisan, not at all. Yeah. And when I used to meet with Democrats, including some former Democratic senators in California, they all, up to several years ago, understood that securing the border is very important. They actually believed in deporting criminals that were here illegally and that committed crimes.
Right.
We've now flipped at 180. San Diego County is now run by Democratic Party. It's the supervisors are 3-2. 3 are very progressive, 2 are more conservative. We are now spending $6 million every few months to defend criminal aliens. These are people that are here illegally who committed a crime, did their time, and now the U.S. government wants to deport them. We're defending them. So somehow we've switched that around. My wife is from Guadalajara. She was born in Mexico. I was very proud to watch her go through the process and become a U.S. citizen, holding the American flag and all that. She will tell you, and even if people are here illegally, but they're decent people and they're just trying to keep their nose clean and work, they don't want criminals next to them. They don't care if they're their compadres from Mexico or Guatemala or Nicaragua. They don't want a pedophile next to them and their kids. They don't want a drug dealer. So while the sun, a lot of Democrats are profoundly, we don't want to deport anybody, even though they're a criminal. And I've had people that are liberals and leftists, I differentiate between the two, who have told me, Chris, we have a lot of American criminals. Yes, we home grow enough that we don't need to import more.
Right.
So if a woman is raped and murdered by an illegal, she'd be alive if he hadn't been allowed in. Right. So you could tell me that's just breaking eggs to make an omelet. It's bullshit. Excuse my language. I'm an Irish cop, and if I curse, I don't give a crap. So they don't care. They don't care how many people have to die or get hurt or victimized because they have this idea in their head of what they want, and we're going to have this perfect society. So since 1924, when the Border Patrol existed, this is the worst the border's ever been. Statistically, it's the worst it's ever been. It was the best under Trump. Now, understand this, I don't like the guy personally. I don't think I want to hang out and crack beers with him. I don't think I'd want him dating my daughter. But I pull up my big boy pants and use my critical thinking skills and say, who did the best? And for me, I'm going to relate to the border. Who did the best ever? And that was him. Because he said to us, he said to the union, National Border Patrol Council, we were the first union that endorsed it. He said,
Right.
I'm going to listen to you guys. I'm going to consider you guys my subject matter experts. And he said this, not some LaRosse attorney, not some Harvard professor, but you guys. But not only did he say that, he lived it. So he said he wanted a wall. And they did several prototypes out here in San Diego that are made of concrete. And we said, we don't want that. We want a fence. We need to be able to see through it because the bad guys, and understand this, everything that comes across that border or the Southwest border that's illicit or illegal, be it people, narcotics, money, weapons, that's either owned outright by the cartels or a group that's operating there has to pay the plaza to work there. And so they're overseen by the cartels. So they attack us. We're the most attacked, assaulted federal agency, law enforcement agency in the country. I got hit in the head with a rock by a smuggler. I was out of work for almost 3 years with traumatic brain injury.
Wow.
I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So we need to be able to see, because they rock us, they throw rocks at us, they throw Molotov cocktails at us, they shoot at us. I've been shot at several times. We had an area in the border in Imperial Beach out here where I worked, 2 areas where we had to sit in armored vehicles because they would shoot at us so often. Wow. So we said we need a fence because we need to see if they're staging back there, if they're ready to ambush us. And he gave us that. Mm-hmm. So we know what worked to secure the border. We told him what worked.
Right.
And he helped us get that. Right now, and I'll try to touch this later on because it has to do with morale, we're almost 3,000 below our statutory minimum. So we're supposed to have 22,000 change. That's the minimum that Congress is supposed to have. We're down to 18,000 and change. That's for the whole border, north and south coasts. So we told him what worked, what we needed, and he started giving it to us. But then the cartels, the transnational criminal organizations, figured out how to game one particular system, the asylum system, which is a great system. There's nobody in the Border Patrol that I know of that wants to get rid of it. It was supposed to be, what it was intended for was like, literally, if your country is committing genocide against a certain group of people, you could come here and be safe. And that's great. But the cartels learned how to game it. And so we started seeing in 2018, the summer of 2018, was they started, the first caravan started coming up. And we have intelligence units in the Border Patrol, and they're really good. I'll stack them up against the CIA, anybody else. What they figured out was that the original caravans were sponsored, organized, and helped paid for by 2 distinct groups, George Soros-backed groups and Venezuelan intelligence. And if it's Venezuelan intelligence, that means Cuban intelligence. And Cuban intelligence means Russian intelligence. There's a lot of foreign nation states out there that want to do us harm. Even if it just disrupts our societal fabric, that's a win for them. Anything that hurts us monetarily, by our people, our civilization, that's a gain for them. And these countries are China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, etc. Those people, those countries, those governments hate this country. They hate what we stand for. So we found out these caravans came up, and what they did was they said they're going to give them a script, depending on what geographic location around the world they come from.
Okay.
And then they'll say, I have a credible fear, and I want to claim asylum. And so they started doing that. Trump said, what can we do to fix this? Because they were getting, they wouldn't even try to hide from us. They jump the fence or whatever and say, hey, I give up, come get me. We process them and release them pending a future nebulous court date that the GAO, the government
because they wanted asylum, because they stated they wanted asylum.
So
even though you probably knew that they were lying.
We knew. So I'm going to give an example on that, Laurie. And I use examples I'm involved with because I know they're true. So I quote a guy, a Chinese national from Fujian province, and he said, so we'd interview them and we use a speakerphone and we use an AT&T operator. And I'm not shilling for AT&T. They charge us an ungodly amount of money per minute to the U.S. government. But they say they can provide somebody who speaks every language in the world, and I've never seen them fail. So got a Chinese woman on, or a woman who spoke Chinese in that dialect. And so I'm interviewing the guy through her on the, on the speakerphone. And I said, so why do you want asylum? And he said, because I'm a Christian, we're persecuted. Now we know that's true. We know that's true. I'm a Christian. I'm not a great one. You could ask my wife. I have to work on it. But I know the central tenets of my faith.
Right.
So I said to him, okay, tell me about Jesus Christ. And he looks up in the air and he goes, he was a friend of Buddha's. And I said, dude, they lived 1,000 years apart. JC and Buddha were not cracking beers together. You're lying. Right. So tell me why you want asylum. And he just, once you push them off the script, they don't have anything to say.
Right.
I got a guy from Nepal. And I'm like, what do you, from Nepal, what do you need asylum for? Oh, the Maoist insurrection. Well, I kind of keep up with current events. And I said, that was put down 5 years previously. I said, it was put down 5 years previous to you wanting, your country is good now. The kingdom of Nepal is great. And I said, so what do you want asylum for? The Maoists. I said, they don't exist anymore. Your government put them down. So they lie. Even Biden admits it's a lie because he says, oh, they're coming here for economic, better life. That's not what asylum is for.
Right.
So Trump said, okay, I'm going to fix this. And we were like, we don't know how. He went to the president of Mexico, they call him Ablo, who's a socialist, and through carrot and stick, and there were some very powerful sticks involved, including taxing remittances, which is where they get most of their money. They make more money from that than their oil and natural gas. He was going to tax that or put a surcharge on it. So if you're a person here in the U.S. that's sending $100 a week back to your family in Mexico or Guatemala, and we take 40% of that, that's a lot. Now you're only saying 50. So that was part of the stick, and also closing ports of entry and things like that. Ablo agreed. The president of Mexico agreed. And it became technically the migrant protection protocols. Basically, everybody called the Remain in Mexico program. And what that did was very simply, even international law says if you're getting out of a country as an asylum seeker or refugee, the first country you get to that's safe, that's where you're supposed to stay. You don't get to dodge around and pick and choose. Like, I think I'd rather be there than here. So the policy was like, okay, you come from China, you claim you're a Christian, you're being persecuted because you're a Christian. Great. You're in Mexico. You're going to wait in line, which is very American. It's very fair. You wait your turn. When it's your turn, you'll be heard by an asylum hearing officer, and he'll adjudicate whether you actually make the quality of being an asylum seeker. And yes, then welcome, God bless, welcome to America. If not, you have a couple choices. You stay in Mexico, or you go back to the country you came from, or go somewhere else, but not to the U.S.
Right.
The numbers plummeted 90% in a matter of days.
Really? Wow.
90% plummeted. What's the first thing this administration, this current administration did day one? Was undone by Biden with an executive order. And they sit there and say, we can't fix it. You broke it. Yes, you can. You could immediately fix it. And I don't particularly like executive orders. I'd rather Congress pass a law.
Right. That would make more sense. But yeah.
But you do what you have to do. And then Trump did executive orders. Well, Biden undid it. And at first I thought, okay, he surrounded himself by naive people just out of college.
Right.
They want to see things the way they see them, or they're just stupid. But now I believe that it's being done with malintent as opposed to misintent. Yeah. So you undid it, and you're saying you can't fix it. Oh, there was this bill in Congress, you shot it down. Well, it was a horrible bill. It allowed up to over 4,000 people a day to come in illegally, legally, before they did anything. So that's over 2 million people a year. It's insane. So he fixed it. It's been broken. We know how to fix it. So that's one of the systems that's being abused, is the asylum system. It's horribly being abused. My wife volunteered for an NGO, and I won't say their name, but I'm not a non-governmental organization. I'm not thrilled with them, but I won't say their name. But she volunteered to see what was happening and to help out. That's one of the organizations where people are put to by the Border Patrol or ICE, or they go on their own there after they're released, and then they fly them around without ID. By the way, they're getting on planes without ID. You try that, see what happens.
Right.
She escorted them to the airport one time, so she saw it firsthand. But she was the intake person. And she said what made her finally stop volunteering was the fact that a guy came in, 20-something-year-old, tatted up, and he said, that 13-year-old is my daughter. Didn't know her name. They still released her to him. And the U.S. government is doing that. HHS, Health and Human Services, is doing that. That's a national.
Why? Why are they doing that?
We can get into that a little bit later. I have my own thoughts on that. They're speculative, but my own thoughts. But 360,000 kids, they don't know where they are. They don't know where they went.
I can't even fathom.
These are young boys and girls. So I'm going to give a point. Under the previous administration, under Donald Trump, the Border Patrol, the union pushed for, and we got agreement that we could do DNA swabs. We'd swab the side of their cheek. And that way we could find out, does that kid actually belong to you? Are you an aunt? Are you an uncle? Are you an older brother, sister, mother, or father? This administration canceled that. Why? It wasn't for enforcement purposes. There was no records kept. There was no database. It was just right then and there. Swabs. Do they match? Do they not match by DNA? Why would you get rid of that? What earthly reason? Even if you're the most liberal, I want people to come here. Why would you not want to make sure that that kid belongs to that family? Right. So 360,000. Everybody was up in arms against Trump. Oh, he lost 600 kids. Okay, 360,000. The inspector general has said that they don't know where they are. They don't know who they released them to. And so it's horrifying. My mom, my stepmom, excuse me, and I love her. She's a liberal. She went to Woodstock. I would have gone to, but she went to Woodstock. She worked for the Carter administration. But she's like, we got to stop human trafficking. I said, then you have to stop all trafficking, because there's not like a boutique organization like, hey, come if you want a 13-year-old girl, that's what we handle. It's the smugglers, it's the cartels. So if you want to stop that, you need to control the borders. And again, it was working. The numbers were down the best they've ever been under Trump, and now they are the worst. So I'm going to point out something. There's a couple other systems that they're abusing to hide numbers. There's a parole system. And it's not parole like you went to prison, now you get out early and you're on parole. It was set up, and the law states that at the time as the Attorney General, they switched it to the Secretary of Homeland Security. On a case-by-case basis, you can be allowed into this country for a specific reason for a specific period of time. What we were taught at the Border Patrol Academy would be something like this. Say you live in Mexico City, down a day after, and you have some kind of brain tumor. And the only people that are super specialists are at like a university medical center in LA.
Sure.
You put in, you get parole, you go up, you have the surgery, you recuperate, you go back to Mexico. They're doing them at $10,000 a shot now. Now, the law says on a case-by-case basis. So there's 4 countries that are really doing this. Cuba, which hates us. Venezuela, which hates us. Haiti, and Nicaragua, which hates us. So we're letting in 30,000 a month legally. So they don't count as legals. They get flown in to the country. That's 360,000 a year, just right there. And the numbers don't show up as apprehensions or whatnot, because it's a shell game. So they're abusing the law there. Now you have another thing. It's an app called CBP1. All you do is sign up ahead of time, and you come up to the port of entry. You have a date and time, and you cross through, and you're allowed in pending this nebulous asylum hearing down the road.
Who shows up to those? Anybody?
So the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, so I respect they're nonpartisan. It's a federal agency. They did a study several years ago that I got a hold of. They found that 90% won't show up. 90%. Now the left will tell you 90% get adjudicated for some. Right, that's the 10% that showed up. So out of the 10% that show up, 90% get adjudicated. Yes, because they show up because they have a real case.
Right.
But 90% will just never show up. And since Border Patrol has been hobbled and ICE has been hobbled, nobody's ever going to go after them. And now you have Kamala, and I met her. I've actually sat down with her and talked with her as a union official. She now wants to find a path to legalization for them. So you're never going to go for your asylum hearing, and then somehow you're going to become a LAPR, which is lawfully admitted for permanent residence, and then somehow you get citizenship after you broke the law.
After you broke the law, because if you and I tried that, like, what if we break the law? What if I decided not to pay taxes? You know, I would end up in jail. But here we have illegal people coming from Nicaragua, from Venezuela, and so they just come over because they signed up for something. They never show up for a hearing. Nobody knows where they went, and they could be the next person that kills my niece or my daughter.
So I'm going to give you a couple things on that too. So they don't show up. Yes, if you and I tried that, we'd be going to jail. There's a dual hypocritical law enforcement system. So California is a sanctuary state by law.
Right.
So we used to work with the police. Now we can't. They're not allowed to work with us under penalty of disciplinary action up to including termination. So about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, there was an incident upstate California. Guy was here illegally. I don't know if it was his wife or girlfriend, but he beat her so badly that he was convicted of domestic violence, and he went to county jail for a year. He was released. They set up a thing for him with the church, where he was able to meet his 2 kids with a church monitor. So he goes to one of these meetings, shoots and kills the church monitor, shoots and kills his 2 kids, then kills himself. And the sheriff had the balls to come out and say, this is what you get from a sanctuary state. I, in the past, would have notified ICE when he was finishing his sentence, and they would be waiting for him and pick him up. He said, by law, I cannot do that. So that's what you get with a sanctuary state or sanctuary city policy. Police cannot come to our checkpoints when we stop someone who's a drunk driver. And since we don't enforce state laws in California, we let them go. They drive down the road drunk.
You have to by law.
Because there's nothing we can do, and the police cannot come out and respond. So that's the sanctuary state thing. Now, you mentioned people coming from Venezuela and Nicaragua, but they're coming from now, the Border Patrol will tell you that 170 countries around the world. Are you telling me 170 countries are so bad that you all need to come here? And I'm not kidding you this. We popped a guy from Japan. It's a first world country. You're coming from Japan for asylum?
I don't think so.
And the last time I had the media down at the border, I said, you're not going to find anybody from Costa Rica. People from Canada and America go down there, expect themselves because it's such a beautiful place. My first wife died young, and I was thinking about just chucking and going down there. The first guy we talked to, I'm talking to him in Spanish. Where are you from? Costa Rica. So you're coming from Costa Rica for
asylum?
Yeah. I had a guy one time, and again, I popped him, and he's from El Salvador, and I said, what are you doing? And why do you need asylum? The gangs, MS-13's after me. I'm like, you're a poor dirt farmer. You got to Mexico. You're safe. No, they come after me. I said, where are you going? LA. I said, that's where MS-13 started, right?
They are.
Hero for MS. That's exactly where it did start in El Salvador. It started in LA. That's where you're going to get away from MS-13, to LA. And then I had a guy from Guatemala, and he said, oh, gang violence. I said, where are you going? And it's a true story. And he said, Oakland. I said, I think people are leaving Oakland to get away from the gangs. I think they're going to Guatemala because it's safer. So again, they're lying, but they're coming from 170 countries around the world. So some people try to say, oh, it's because you don't like brown people. The U.S. Border Patrol on the southwest border is over 60% Hispanic, be they from Mexico, be they from Ecuador. They were either born in those countries and naturalized, or their parents came from it. Or if you're an Anglo like me, you usually marry into a Mexican family, which is what I did. So you have people like AOC and people, oh, you guys are racist, you're xenophobes. 60-some% are Hispanic. I had CNN down there several years ago, and they came around. They couldn't show the guys' faces, but they could talk to the agents because they're not technically allowed to speak to the media. And afterwards, the director said, everybody had a Hispanic surname. Did you set that up? And I was like, yeah, I have that much power in the union that I can tell the Border Patrol where to assign their people just so it looks like that. No, that was just the way it worked. So it's tiresome when people say, oh, it's only brown people, you don't like black. They're coming from 170 countries around the world. And a lot of these are troubled countries for various reasons, but we're letting them in and we're not vetting them, Laurie. And here's the thing. The media and the liberals and the leftists will tell you we're vetting them. Yes, we fingerprint them. Yes, we take their photographs, their biometric data. But I would always tell them, if you want to call yourself Mickey Mouse, God bless. That name's going to stick with these fingerprints now in the U.S. forever.
Sure.
But I don't know who you are. And this is a true story. We had a guy from El Salvador. And our guys were really good at interviewing, and they were talking to him for a while, and they ran all the record checks they could. And it came back what we call 1040, non-derogatory. Nothing bad came back. So they're going to release him on an NTA, a notice to appear. On their way out, he said something in Spanish about, I thought those 5 murders were going to cause me some problems. Well, come back in. Let's talk some more.
Red flag.
Went through the El Salvadorian consulate. He had 5 murders that were hanging on him in El Salvador. We're going to let him walk out the door. So we don't have interface with a lot of these systems in other countries.
Sure. China
has a great system. They're not sharing with us. Venezuela, I'm sure, does. Any communist socialist country has a good system. They're not sharing with us. Or they're a crap country where they have no system. But we don't interface with them. We do with Interpol. I mean, we got a guy one time on an Interpol warrant for war crimes. But normally that's not going to happen. So 99% of people, we don't know who they are. They tell us who they are. If they've never been arrested in the United States or by the U.S. military, like if you were in Iraq and you were caught by the U.S. military, you probably were fingerprinted. But other than that, we don't know who you are. Right. No idea what your criminal background is. So I'm going to segue into one other thing now. And then I you ask me whatever you want. I try to be very conservative with my numbers. So nobody can come back and you say, you said 990,000, or you said 1 million, it was really 990,000. So I'm super conservative.
Sure.
Over 10 million people have entered this country basically illegally. Conservative, we're probably up to about 14 million now, but 10 million in the last 3 years and 9 months, which is unheard of, staggering. When Biden first came into office, media people that was still doing stuff with the mainstream media I would say, we're going to go over 1 million apprehensions this year. Oh, that's not going to happen. Well, they were right. We went to 2 million. And then nobody cared. So 10 million. Now, when I worked at Puro Beach Border Patrol Station in San Diego sector, we covered from the ocean to the San Ysidro port of entry, about 6 miles, and then many miles north. About 60% of the people we arrested statistically were criminals, criminal aliens. But that was unique because we were right north of TJ.
Sure.
I mean, most of the guys I arrested, they were tatted up. I mean, I'd sometimes have to go gun out and get them on the ground. And then you ask them, who do you bang with? And they were very proud to tell you, MS-13, or I'm from, 18th Street, whatever. So I'm not saying that's the whole border. So we're going to be super conservative. Let's just say that 10% are bad people. And that's going to be a gamut. And I'll explain that in a second. So 10% of 10 million is 1 million people that are bad. Now, what that means is that you're run-of-the-mill garden variety criminal. You're a gangbanger. You're cartel. Or now the 2 last groups are the ones that get really dangerous. You're a terrorist, or you work for a foreign nation state. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Russian intelligence, Chinese intelligence, that type of thing. Or even Spetsnaz. It's not called the KGB anymore. At RSB, they changed their name. But we're almost in a shooting war with Russia. I mean, we're close, I have a picture of a Russian male, military age is what we call them, young 20s, crew cut, buffed out, really good build, nice clothes, clean, and he's going to be released into the United States. Wow. So, and I'll touch on one other thing. So, foreign nation states. One of the jobs we had was we would go to out here, we respond to military bases where a foreign national is trying to enter the base. And they were stopped by either the MPs, the security police, or the DOD, Department of Defense police. We got sent out. If they were from a couple of special countries, then NCIS would send a special agent to assist. And I won't go more of that. So I get a call out. There's 5 Chinese women in this car. The 2 up front, driver to passenger, giggly 20-some-year-old, smiling and laughing. 2 by the windows, same thing, young 20-something, smiling, laughing. Woman in the middle, 45, 50 years old, stone-faced, watching everything. And the special agent and I were talking to each other, and the first thing we both said almost simultaneously, she's Chinese intel. She's Chinese intelligence operative. They are, and they do this all the time. They're from Saudi Arabia and other countries. They try to get on our bases. They're probing, and it's happening more and more. There was a special forces guy in the East Coast, South. He shot and killed a guy that was surveilling his house. It made very little bit on the news, but because the guy had night vision gear and all this, was surveilling this guy's house.
Wow.
Ended up shooting and killing him. They've been trying to get on our bases for years, but they're upping the game. And again, it's all for intelligence and probing. How do we enter a base? What happens? So if anything kicks off with Taiwan, bad things are going to happen because we're letting Chinese by the tens of thousands, military-age men into our country. So you got that 1 million that are bad. Let's say only 10% of that are the real bad actors. They're terrorists, they're foreign operatives, either they're special forces, special operations forces, or their intelligence. That's still 100,000 people.
Right.
That we've let, and I'm being super conservative.
Yeah.
That 100,000 people that are really bad. And you want to say 10% is too high, Chris. Okay, let's say 1% of the 1 million bad people. That's still the 10,000 people.
Yeah.
We had a situation.
What can 10,000 terrorists do to our country?
I am truly horrified and worried with the missing children and on that. So a couple of years ago out here in Southern California, there was a big power substation. You know, that nobody works there. It's the transformer station. Somebody shot it up with 4 rounds. Now the press went with what the government told them. Oh, it was some, and they loved the narrative. It was some drunken Yahoo, hunter just shot up. Well, we know from our intel that it was one person, and he was there for a while. We could tell by how the footprints and everything, and that he shot 4 critical components. 4 shots, 4 critical components. Dropped the power. I was one of the people that lost power. Huge chunk of Southern California lost their power. We believe that was a warning shot to the U.S. government over something.
Sure.
So somebody did that. We also know that in Mexico, Hezbollah and Hamas have training camps.
Right.
We know that for a fact.
Yep.
And so what we see, like in Iraq, like in Fallujah, the tactics the bad guys were using, within 2 years, the cartels are using. The cartels are hot and heavy in drones now. They're actually dropping explosives on each other.
Because they're all connected, aren't they? I mean, yeah.
Well, they have training camps in Mexico, and so they work with the cartels because it's money, and they hate the U.S. Now, we've had a gentleman's agreement with Hamas and Hezbollah until recently that we won't touch them. Now, I mean, you could think it's good or bad, but since Lebanon back in the early 80s, we really haven't had any bad things for the U.S. with Hezbollah and Hamas. I think that agreement's shredded. So don't be surprised if something happens bad in this country through the cartels, through these terrorist groups, or through a foreign nation state that wants to do us harm. Again, I think if we go to war with China over Taiwan, you're going to go, oh, it's over there. No, bad things are going to happen in this country. Bad things are going to happen. And so I'm very nervous about that. I'm nervous about our societal fabric. Fentanyl is pouring over the border like crazy.
Awful.
And Border Patrol agents, we have a mandatory retirement at 57. And I have people go, wow, you're lucky. I'm like, ooh, when I was in my young 50s, I weighed myself and I put on my battle rattle. I was 55 pounds. I'm schlepping up and down mountains. I'm 52 years old. So there's a reason, but it's mandatory federal law enforcement. Agents and even bosses. I remember a chief came to me for the union trying to get a waiver to stay longer. And now they retire as soon as they can. So instead of people staying 57, if you're 50 and you got 25 years in the patrol, you can retire. And they are. As soon as they can, they're bad. And you're losing all that institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
And so we're so shorthanded. And the morale is shot because they actually feel like they are part of the smuggling organization because they're doing what the smugglers used to hire people. They're the load vehicle drivers. They pick them up at the border, bring them to the station, feed them, clothe them, house them. That's the load house now. And then they drive them to the airport or the trolley station or to an NGO to further their entry in the United States. That's what the cartels, the smugglers used to pay for. We're doing now. And a big chunk of our people are former military. And I've worked in 5 law enforcement agencies in 36 years. And I'm the most proud of these men and women. And they don't have to be from the military, but they care so much about the Constitution. Right. They care so much about this country and protecting the people therein. Understand when 9/11 happened, some of those people that died in the towers were here illegally. So, they just want to protect people. Right. And they're not allowed to. I used to tell congressmen and senators, I have the easiest union job in the world. Yes, we'd like better pay. Yes, we'd like better equipment. Blah, blah. But really what they want to do is let them work harder. Let them do what they signed on to do, which is to protect this country. Right. And they're not allowed to. And they're resigning and retiring in droves. So That's what's going on at the border. It's ugly. It's true. The left can say it's not happening or it's not as bad. The numbers are staggering. And even the numbers that you can find, and the other numbers I said, they're playing a shell game. Oh, they're not technically here illegally. Yeah, okay. But the numbers are staggering. And what it doesn't touch on is the getaways. We call them gotaways. And that's the people that we know we didn't catch. And so, and the way that works is we don't just make up a number and guess. So if a sensor goes off, and it's not operational security, the cartels, everybody knows we have sensors, seismic, and others. So if you got one by the fence, they jump the fence, and by the time you get there, if there's an agent available, and then you track them out, we're really good at tracking. And you figure out, okay, I got signed for 12. And then you get up to a roadway, and the sign stops, it goes away. You know they got in a vehicle and got away. So that's 12 getaways, 12 golf gotaways. If you're a scope operator, infrared scope, thermal imaging scope, you see a group and there's no agents available to work the group, after a while, they're going to be out of your sight going north, and you're going to say, okay, that's 100 gotaways. So we'll tell you that averages about 30% of apprehensions. There's also the gotaways we don't even know about. These are people now that don't want to get caught. They're not just jumping the border and sitting there by the hundreds going, come get us. So what's going on with them? So 10 million, 30%, and that's the known gotaways. So you're talking about a significant number of people that we don't even know got away, or we know got away. And those are the people that really should scare you too.
Right. So we have the criminals that are coming in. And, this is what I hear from so many people, but we have to take care of the people that come over, because some of them are families. Some of them are actually, they're looking for a better life, blah, 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 blah.
The right way.
I know that's.
I pulled out my wife. Yeah, sure.
Right. Come the right way. I just had a friend, she was, I don't know, taking her like 7 years to get her citizenship from South Africa. I mean, and they paid, a lot of money to get that citizenship. And you could just come through the border for free and get paid once you get across.
So I had a guy who was from Ecuador, and he wanted his sister to come up. He was a border patrol agent. Yeah. So I brought him to our local congressman, and he said, should I just have her jump the fence? Because we've been trying for years, and they won't grant her anything to come. So, but he was kidding, he wasn't having to jump the fence. But yeah, that is problematic. And we do have to fix our immigration system. And that's on Republicans and Democrats. Right. Because we've had a Republican hold House, Senate, and presidency all once, and they've never done anything. There are people, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that love illegal immigrants. And it's not just for cheap labor, but look at Tyson Foods. They so I can't get sued for libel. They got caught hiring 14-year-olds. Mm-hmm. This is what they love. So people need to have a pathway to come here the right way, to get fully vetted. Oh, we did go through your country. We did find out, oh, you're a criminal. You're not coming in. We have our own. We don't need to bring more in. We don't need to import more criminals.
We don't need any Venezuelan criminals.
So, no, Trend or Aragua, it's horrible. Look at Aurora. We have a family member stationed out there. The military's warned them, stay away from certain areas. It's actually happening. Vance just talked about it with an ABC.
And we're lied to in the media and said, no, it's not happening. It's just a handful. Well, do you hear what you're saying? Just a handful? So
there was a nonpartisan law attorney firm that was hired by the bank that had money invested in these 3 properties, 3 apartment complexes.
Yeah.
I got hold of the article, the report. He presented it to the Aurora City Council, the mayor, and it says, yes, this is happening. This is bad. They're bad. Trend or Agua definitely rules these places, and you now have Aurora trying to backstep, and of course the Denver mayor, oh, it's all good, it's all lies. The governor, who's far left, oh, it's all good, it's all lies. No, it's not. People that we know are stationed out there, or the military. And how sad is that? In the United States, they're told not to go into certain areas in the U.S. city because of these foreign national gangs. That should be horrifying to people too. So we know it works. We know how to secure the border. It's just, are we going to get somebody that wants to? And people ask me, like, do you think you're doing it on purpose? I now do think so. We know some are going to vote. You can tell me all you want that they don't vote. I arrested a guy one time with paperwork on that showed he had just voted. He was illegal. Nobody wanted to do anything with that. No prosecution. But you have Kamala now literally saying, I'm going to find a pathway for them to become a LAPR, lawfully admitted for permanent residence, and a citizen. So they're going to vote. And if you're being given free stuff, who are you going to vote for? The people that give you the free stuff.
Give you the free stuff, yeah.
The other thing people don't look at is the next census. Illegals get counted. Trump tried to say don't count them, and it went to the Supreme Court, and he lost that. So they count illegals. So California and New York lost congressional representatives, which the Democrats then lost people.
Right.
because they lost popular people bailing on New York City. People are like we are looking to get out of California. So if you put illegals there, the numbers go back up. And so you get, when it's reapportionment time, if the next census, you'll get more seats that they know are going to be Democratic controlled. It's New York City and California. So there's reasons to allow them to come in. And I also think there's people that truly hate our country, hate that we're a democratic republic. I'm tired of people saying we're a democracy. We're not. We're a democratic republic.
Republic, yep.
Democracy is 100 people and 51 vote that the other 49 have to die. That's not always good.
Right.
So we are a constitutional republic, democratic republic. And I think there's people in this country, not just foreign nation states, but groups and organizations of people that hate this country.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to see us demise, or at least become a second world power, a second world nation, if you will. And you do that by costing us billions, killing us with our kids are dying from fentanyl. And I don't hear people screaming about it on the left. I don't get it. And these are not bad kids. It's not like, oh, these are drug addict kids.
No.
A kid that's smoking a joint, and you know it's legal in California, so big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's laced with fentanyl, and he dies. Or they're taking a pill they think is ADD for ADHD, whatever, and it ends up having fentanyl in it, and they die. They're dying by the hundreds of thousands, and nobody seems to care.
Yeah,
and that's coming across the border now, because here's what the cartels learned: put 200 people through, 300 people, 400, 100 people through at a time, have them all sit down and wait for that. We want asylum, so you have to pull agents, and this happens 50 miles away, to come and transport them to the station and then help process them. Now the border is wide open. And we know the cartels know this, and they do it deliberately. That's when they put the high value stuff in bad people that they don't want to get caught, or narcotics. So we're being overwhelmed by fentanyl because we have an open border, and we do have an open border. It's real. It's happening. And for people to say it's not, they're either really stupid, or they're disingenuous at best, or they're lying to your face.
Right.
And I have friends in New York. Unfortunately, it doesn't touch them, or hasn't touched them yet, and they disagree with me. I had somebody said, "Well, that's not what the New York Times said." I said, well, I've done articles in the New York Times, specifically one or two different writers, a decent guy. But I said, none of them come down to the border. They call me from Manhattan. And they talk with me, and they quote me. I've been quoted. I said, but none of them are on the border. So I lived there for 21 years. I still live on the border. I was a union representing the people that do this. He goes, I'm going to believe them over you, Chris. And I'm like, I don't know how to process that.
Yeah, okay. I don't know how to process that either. I mean, I've had friends that have gone down there, as reporters, and they're like, filming, they're interviewing, they're doing all these things, and it's exactly how you are saying it is, but yet the narrative as a whole from the media and stuff is telling us it's not a crisis, it's not an issue. And I would love for you to go back a little bit. So you said Bill Clinton was like on board, like Democrats and Republicans work together on border security for the most part in the past. Like, why do you think that has changed? Because all of a sudden it's become political instead of a matter of just protecting our country, like the sovereignty of America. I don't understand why we've lost that.
Well, first of all, no nation state in the history of mankind has been able to last any length of time if they couldn't control their borders.
Right.
Just ask the Roman Empire. You can't control your borders, you fail. Why? It started happening around 2015 when Trump started running. And I'm not putting this on Trump, but I saw this real switch. I used to be able to talk speaking engagements for groups that were moderate or even left of center. They wanted to hear. Now nobody will talk to me unless they're moderate to the right. I did one at a Jewish synagogue that was reformed. I wore my yarmulke, and they're like, "Why do you have a yarmulke?" I'm from New York City. From New York, and they were like, "Oh, we're reformed. We don't wear them." I'm like, "All right, cool," but I have one. But they wanted to hear what I had to say. They might disagree with me, but they wanted to hear. And that started changing 2015, 2016, and that's when I saw the flip, where the Democrats, specifically some Democrats, would say in the past, yes, Chris. Now they might quibble about what would be deportable offense. Like, well, it's only a DUI. Like, well, okay, that's still, but you can quibble. But they did, there was a point where they said, yeah, the guy's a murderer, rapist, he needs to be deported. And now they just simply do not want to deport anybody, and they want an open border. I don't know why it changed. It did become political. I don't know if it's more of a leftist thing. Again, I think starting in universities and the media, there's people that want to see our country degraded, to not be the premier nation of the world, that don't like our Constitution, that don't like our freedoms and liberties, that don't like a democratic republic. We're the last bastion. Once we go, who else? So I think it's done deliberately. I don't know why so many have gone in lockstep. My wife is a registered Democrat. She voted for Trump. She says Democrats are in lockstep and they enforce it. So maybe that's part of it. Because we have people in Congress that are Democratic men and women that served in the armed forces. They have to have some patriotism, but they go along like 99% with whatever the Democratic Party says. And the party itself has swung so far to the left.
Right.
I mean, if JFK was alive today, they would consider him a conservative warmonger.
Oh my gosh, right? Yeah.
So, you know,
Well, even the stuff that Clinton ran on is very conservative.
Yes, yes.
Compared to
And the
what's
border,
going on
yes.
today. You know, I voted for Clinton. I was a Democrat.
So I mean, I'm going to put a little aspersion on Republicans. George Bush was granted a lot of money, and it was a bipartisan thing to build 700 miles of fence on the border. It was not a big deal then. He built about 70. A lot of people in business world and Chamber of Commerce and others fought him and said, we don't want that for him. We don't want it. We don't, it's not good. And he didn't do it. So, you know, I'm going to put some aspersion on the Republicans because he was given the chance to put 700 miles of new fencing up and he didn't do it.
He didn't do it. Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, no, Trump wants to put up a fence and it's somehow the fence is inherently racist. Now, I will point out,
it's a fence.
The fence doesn't care who you are.
I have a fence. We have a fence around our pasture. We have a fence. There's walls around cities. There's fences everywhere to
around
keep
military
in or out.
bases. So what happened after January 6th? And please don't think I support January 6th. I think people that went into the Capitol were wrong.
Yes.
But what was the first thing that Nancy Pelosi and the left did? Democrats
put up a fence.
Fences everywhere in DC. Fences everywhere, as far as you can see. But they're the same people that tells you that they don't work. The same people that the rich people
around all our schools.
Bill Gates, they have fences around their houses, around their communities. It happens, you know, they're not the end all and be all. You need manpower to guard them and respond and same with the border. But they are helpful. So Trump wants to build a fence. Oh my gosh, it's racist. Again, people are coming from 170 different countries. The fence doesn't care. The technology doesn't care. The Border Patrol agents don't care. They don't go like, oh, this guy's from Mali, he's Africa, oh, screw them. This guy's coming here illegally. I don't care if he's from Ireland. He's coming here illegal. We're going to arrest them, process them, and let the system take its course. They're not allowed to do that now. There's nothing inherently racist about controlling your borders, protecting your people, deporting criminals. It is national security. We talked about the military bases. It is very much national security. And I don't understand. I get that sometimes liberals don't have all the information, maybe don't seek it out. They get theirs from a couple different news sources, the New York Post or New York Times, Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, MSNBC, sure. But leftists, they know.
Yeah.
And they're pushing for this. And we see now this rise of anti-Semitism at our universities, in the streets of New York, on the subways. Where are these people coming from?
Yeah.
They're not all homegrown.
They're not all homegrown, no.
And so we're seeing this acceptance of anti-Semitism by the Democrats as a whole, the party itself. Kamala can't come out and say, I hate Hezbollah and Hamas, screw them, Israel, do what you got to do. No, oh, well, Israel's not good either. She's trying to placate a certain group that is becoming more powerful in the Democratic Party. And so if you are against anti-Semitism, which everybody should be, you should be questioning the open borders and where are these people coming from that are flying in, that are coming across the borders. 170 countries around the world. That includes the Middle East.
Yeah, and we're flying them to wherever they want to go.
Right. Well, it was funny that Adams and others of Democratic cities were complaining that Abbott was sending people from Texas to them. But that was a drop in the bucket. Most of those people were sent by the U.S. government.
Yeah.
Flights, or by these NGOs, Catholic Charities and all that, fly them there. Or they went there on their own because they were sanctuary cities and that's where they want to go.
Yeah.
They know they're going to get free stuff. So they're now starting to cry a little bit about it, but that's shame on you. And so those protests you're having in the streets, where do those people come from? The U.S. government let them into this country, and they're not being vetted. And again, I am terrified that you're going to see terrorist attacks. And it might not be something as grand as 9/11. If I was a terrorist mastermind, I would have several groups of people, each group 4 or 5 people, and say at a certain date and time, I don't want you to coordinate. You're not going to know each other. At a certain date and time, this group's going to show up at this little town. This group's going to show up at this town. And one guy's going to show up. He's going to walk into the local ER and shoot it up. You're going to walk into a local classroom and shoot up in Molotov cocktails. You're going to shoot up the police station. You're going to shoot up the fire department. You're going to go into a mall and just start shooting people. Yeah. Because after 9/11, we had a detail here called Operation Ironclad. And we were augmenting our checkpoints. And I stopped somebody, and they were really annoyed that they got stopped at the checkpoint for the whole 20 seconds I'm going to talk to them. And I remember the lady say, just so you know, we hate you all. And this was a East County farm woman, ranch woman, whatever. But I said, man, we're trying to prevent another 9/11. She goes, it won't happen out here.
Mm,
So if I wanted to hurt America, I would hit small little towns
right.
in middle America
Yeah.
and some big cities. But I want everybody to be shaken, feeling that it could happen anywhere.
Right.
And that's not hard to do. And
No.
so
And
if we're
we
talking
live in
about
the middle of,
10,000 people or 100,000 people that are bad, really bad.
yeah. I mean, we live in the middle of Iowa, so there's lots of hog factories, chicken factories, all that kind of stuff around here. And I'm not saying all those people are illegal, so please don't,
No.
shoot me here there. But I'm just saying possibility is greater when you have those types of, labor options around here. And, I often think about that. I mean, I have an 18-year-old daughter, I've got nieces and nephews, like what I don't know what those people, I don't know if there's illegal people. I don't know if they're criminals. I don't, because I know they're not vetted. I know that bothers me as a mother
Well,
that,
look, it's not like it's a hypothetical. It happened in 9/11. Those guys were all visa overstays. They were here illegally. One of them lived down the street from us in Claremont here,
really,
and went to the local mosque. We don't enforce. So after 9/11, they did a blue ribbon committee, and they said, well, we have no way to track if people leave when their visas expire or they're thrown out of college, so they're no longer supposed to be here legally. We have no way to track it. Well, that was 20 some years ago. We still don't have a way to track people that
you should
come here on a
have a
visa.
way to track everything else.
Well, they're finding out that a lot of truck drivers, there's been a lot more accidents on the freeways with tanker trucks. Cartels are moving to Texas and other states to steal oil and gas. And they're using people that don't have real driver's licenses from
Right.
countries like Nicaragua, Mexico. They have fake B1 visas. And so we're seeing this havoc on our roadways. So even that, just accidents.
Yeah.
Look, again, not castigating all people that are here illegally, but traditionally when we arrest a lot of these guys that have been here for a while, they have multiple DUI offenses, DWI offenses.
Sure.
They have multiple domestic violence offenses, and they're not being deported. We had one not a few years ago in my location, Imperial Beach. Guy was drunk, illegal, smashed into a car, almost killed the kid. The kid had to go through. I don't think the kid died, or maybe he did. Anyway, it was a horrific accident. So my point is, okay, he's got prior DWIs. If we had removed him, this accident never would have happened.
It never would have happened.
That woman that was raped in Georgia and murdered,
Yeah.
that wouldn't have happened. The two brothers are both Trinidad. And there's numerous cases that the national media won't, local media will cover it, but
Yeah.
it generally doesn't get on the national media. But I would love for somebody to do a hard-hitting expose and saying, we tracked all these cases that are murders and rapes, and they're all people that are here illegally. And if they hadn't been let in, those women
Wouldn't have happened.
those women wouldn't have been raped, they wouldn't have been murdered.
No. Can we just swing back to the kids, like the
Sure.
350, 60,000 that are
360,000.
missing? I mean, so we've got, people up in arms, like, when Trump was in office, and I guess it happened in Obama too. I don't know, but kids in cages.
So let me explain it real quick.
At least we knew where they were.
So there's a reason. We were overwhelmed at the time with the caravans.
Yeah.
We can't keep kids with men. It's a law.
Right.
So it's a federal law, and it makes sense. Even if the guy
Totally
claims
makes
his
sense.
father, we don't know that. So we have to separate them. So they set up these temporary chain link fences. That's all they were, was to segregate them. Like mothers can stay with certain kids, certain ages, but women cannot be with men. Grown men cannot be with any type of woman.
Sure.
And there's legitimate reasons for
that. Yes.
Federal law. So if we didn't do that, we'd be violating the law. And if, God forbid, one of those women or kids were raped, they would come after the Border Patrol hot and heavy, and the media would have gone crazy.
You guys had such a bad reputation anyway.
So it wasn't that they weren't in kennels; they just put up temporary chain link, and it was done under Obama. Nobody said a word about it. Trump's doing it; it went crazy. It still happens, but now we're just shoving the kids through so quickly, and they keep saying, "Oh, we gave more money to ICE and Border Patrol." That was specifically for administration processing. So all they want to do is make it quicker and easier for these people to come here illegally, process them, and move them on.
Right.
So we don't know where these kids are going. And again, 360,000. There was Inspector General's report. HHS does not know where 360,000 juveniles, kids, and that goes up to the age of 16 or 17.
Sure.
So they're not all like 9-year-olds, but still, a lot of them are little kids. 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds. Look, we've caught kids coming up, girls coming up from South America, Central America. Their parents gave them Plan B, for birth control after the fact, after they're raped. So first of all, it makes me question what the parents are hoping to gain by sending their daughter somewhere where you're pretty sure she's going to get raped.
Right.
I've seen rape trees. They're an actual real thing. And so where the coyotes, the smugglers, will rape every woman in the group, and they take all their braziers and they throw them into the tree so they're hanging from the branches. And it's a way to instill fear and the misogyny and all that. But they're actual real things. I mean, I saw somebody in the media say they're not real. I've seen it firsthand. And it's just, like, I have two daughters, we have grandkids. It's horrifying. And so you have to wonder why there are people pushing for this.
Why do we want to deny this is happening?
And who are these people that want to have young boys or girls that are available for sexual exploitation? Who in government? Who high up in the film industry? Who high up in music industry? Who high up here in legislators and political branches? Who wants this? And again, DNA swabs, easiest thing in the world. Told we can't do that anymore. You have to ask yourself, and I have my own thoughts on it, but that's speculative. But just ask yourself in your heart of hearts, is this something important to you? The safety of young boys and girls. They're either going to be working as like indentured servants or they're going to be in the sex trade. And that's absolutely happening. When a 20-some-year-old guy comes in and says, that 13-year-old girl's my daughter, and he doesn't know her name, and the girl looks terrified, and the NGO still lets her go with him.
Why do they let her go? Why would, like, say, an NGO, I don't want to name any, because
I don't have a lot of faith. My wife's a devout Catholic, good Mexican girl, but she's not happy with the Catholic Church, with Catholic charities. That's one of the biggest ones. And they don't just get money from the Catholic people giving money. They get money from the federal government.
Right.
And I've looked up and researched them, and they're very left of center. And I think they have their own ideology. And I don't think it's a real Christian-based ideology, but that's my own opinion. But they are involved with this. They are letting girls and boys go to people that they know aren't their parents. They're not their aunt or uncle. So again, I just have to wonder, what is your game plan? What are you gaining from this? Do you have an ideology that, again, I think it was Mao, they at least they attribute to, and said, you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. Basically, people have to die to get that perfect society. Is that what they're into? I also believe that a lot of people are appreciative of the sex trade.
Yeah, I know. I just interviewed.
Look at the news sources, Diddy and all this. I mean, you know what I mean? It's out there.
It's out there. It's out, and it's way bigger than what we think. I just interviewed a woman who, in our area, she works with sex trafficking survivors, and she, the stories she tells is just blows your mind. What happens, and they're not all illegals, right? I mean, it's
no. They snatch up girls, but some of these gangs are snatching up your kids in neighborhoods.
Exactly. That's the point. Like, they're here, and they're going to start invading.
They're in your schools. They're in your kids' schools.
Yeah, because they lie about their age. They say they're 16 and they're actually 26. I mean, and they don't have an ID.
So I'm going to talk about that real quick. I usually don't, because I forgot about it. But the last homicide I worked as a cop in New York, this kid's in school. He's in like 9th grade. He's from Guatemala. His stepmom or a foster mom brought him here. She worked for social services. She lied about his age. So they said he was 16. They put him in 9th grade because he had no English. He didn't even speak Spanish. My partner was fluent, spoke Castilian Spanish, and he interviewed me. He says, this idiot doesn't even speak Spanish. Some indigenous mountain tribal dialect. So he's actually 20-something years old.
Oh my gosh. And
he makes friends. He's in 9th grade. He makes friends with a boy in 7th grade. It was in the paper and everything. He became his friend, and then he tried to do some sexual stuff with the 12-year-old. 12-year-old wanted nothing to do with it. So he strangled the boy, killed him. He was 26 years old, and people, with these kids in 9th grade. And we knew that happened more than people wanted to believe. In Long Island, MS-13 has kids in high schools. They were beheading people with machetes. It did not really make the national news.
Why didn't it make the national news?
Because it doesn't fit the narrative they want to talk about. So they literally, these teenage MS-13 guys who were older than they said, were in high school. They were trying to recruit people into MS-13, and they beheaded a few people with machetes, kids. So they're in your school, your kids' schools. They are trying to recruit, these gangbangers are trying to recruit young girls, recruit them, entice them into it. Or, there are actually girls are getting abducted. And usually what they do is they gang rape them to break them down, and then they sell them. And this is happening in your schools, in your neighborhoods. I'm not trying to fearmonger, but I was a cop. I saw it as a border patrol agent. I know it's happening. We did raids in these little migrant shanties, illegals basically. And they had people that would bring 12, 13, 14-year-old girls there to service the men. And they would service several men in a row. Yeah. I don't think that was good for the 12, 13, 14-year-old girls.
No.
And we're not allowed to do those kind of raids anymore. So I don't get why people are not horrified by this and finally said, you know what, this is not a partisan issue.
It is
we need
not
to
a
fix
partisan
this.
issue. It's not about politics. It's about the life of our kids. It's about our border security. It's not Democrat or Republican. I'm just so
It shouldn't
angry.
be. It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And it doesn't matter who's president. Anybody who's president should want to protect our kids and
Yes.
protect the border.
My own thing is that this last presidency, the president, vice president did not. And I know
Literally.
Kamala's saying that, oh, I'm going to do things different. And then she says, no, I'm not. Everything's fine. You were the border czar, whether you want to accept that or not. That's what your job was, or one of the jobs you were tasked with by the president. You did nothing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't talk about Kamala's past. I don't bring anything bad about her. I will say this.
I want to know what she did the last 3.5 years as vice president before I would vote for her, and I'm not impressed.
Well, let me put this in context. So I met her as a union guy and talked about some issues we had. She was Attorney General at the time of California, running for the U.S. Senate. She gave me a hug and said, "Hey, cuz," because we have the same last name. And I said, "Oh, you're Irish." Back then, she was identifying as Jamaican and Indian, but no, she's not. So, or whatever, she self-identify whatever she wants. I don't care. She spoke really good stuff to us. Then I saw her, unfortunately, a few weeks after that at a cop's funeral out here. He was shot and killed in the line of duty. And she showed up as the Attorney General, and she spoke glowingly about him and law enforcement in general. About 2 weeks later, I was at another thing. It was a union thing, and I was there for National Border Patrol Council belongs to American Federation of Government Employees, which is a very liberal union.
Sure.
And I was there, and she, look, I get targeting your message to groups a little bit. You change a little bit. You emphasize something, de-emphasize something else. She did a 180. She just castigated law enforcement. And we're out of control, corruption, brutality. And I'm like, this woman just 2 weeks ago spoke glowingly about us in front of us. And now she's with a group, and she's not thinking that there's cops here in the audience or federal agents. And she blasted us. So the hypocrisy was staggering. Sure. So truly, I think she'll say and do whatever she needs to do to get where she needs to get, where she wants to go. So if that's something you're comfortable with, and if you're comfortable with an open border, and you're comfortable with kids are missing, 360,000,
and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's finding them.
And you don't mind the fentanyl, and you don't mind the sex trafficking, you don't mind the crime, and a lot of misogyny. There's a lot of it is directed at women, and I don't hear women's groups speaking up about it.
Which I don't understand either.
No, we had a big problem out here with cross-border sewage and chemicals coming across the Mexican U.S. And I even got Donald Trump involved. And once he left, it went away, but it's still happening. And I was talking to people from the Sierra Club, and I said, "Why aren't you guys hammering Mexico for doing this? I mean, it's people are getting chemical burns, and the beaches are closed." And they said, "Oh, well, it's Mexico." And I said, "Could you be any more patronizing? Because they're grown adults. My wife is a grown-ass adult. She helps run my household.
Right.
She pays the bills. She's a capable woman. So are you telling me that people in Mexico are just not capable of doing things? There's a treaty between us. They're not supposed to do this."
Right.
And their high-ups in their government have said, "Well, it flows in the U.S., not our problem." So we obey our side of the treaty because there's things we have to do. You're not being, it's Treaty 44, if I remember correctly. You're not doing your side, but Sierra Club, this is an environmental disaster. You're not going after them. Oh, because it's Mexico. So I see this, though, in a lot of different things where some of these elites are very patronizing and condescending, and they give people a buy. And so I'm going to suggest that some of these women's groups like, oh, well, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, used to love them. I have no respect for them anymore. Where are they? Because we have tons of people that are being hurt and killed by illegal aliens driving, either with a license out in California and get a license, or illegally. They're driving because they don't have a license. And they are killing people. They're being arrested by large numbers, a lot of DUIs, DWIs. Whereas you've never heard Mothers Against Drunk Drivers say, "Hey, you know what? We don't really get into the immigration issue, but for people that are here illegally, and if they get arrested, a second time for DUI, they should be deported." Not a peep out of them.
Not a peep.
This is a danger to you, your families, and our people on the roads. And again, if you're here illegally and you're not supposed to be here and you commit a crime, that's a crime that could have been prevented. Are we going to have still Americans that commit crimes against other people? Sure. Yeah. If I could send them all to another area, like the British did with Australia, set their penal colonies there, I would do it. But I can't remove people that are U.S. citizens from this country. Can't put them in prison, and all about that. But if you're here illegally and you're not keeping your nose to the grindstone. I mean, when I was in the Border Patrol at the beginning, if they saw us, they were illegal, they would run. Just us driving down the road, they would run.
Not anymore?
No, they'll just give you the finger. They'll stand there because there's not anything there's nothing we really can do.
You can't do anything.
No. So they do it to the police, they do it to us. I can tell that guy's illegal. I'm going to go talk to him. He's like, F you. It's got to that point. And again, if they're here in a gang, they're committing crimes, violence. Why are we not allowed to remove them? Why do places like in Massachusetts have sanctuary laws where they won't tell ICE, hey, we're releasing this bad guy? And they had one up there recently in Massachusetts. They released a guy and the courts, and they didn't tell ICE, and he committed a rape. So that's what your sanctuary policy got your citizens, was a young woman is raped because you, for your ideological reasons, wouldn't tell the police we're releasing this criminal who's here illegally. And so when do people say, open their eyes, ask questions, look into things, check figures on their own, go to CBP websites and say, you know what, this is bad. It's not, it's terrifying. It's horrifying. It's reprehensible. It's a danger to my family. It's a danger to my kids. It's a danger to my neighborhood. It's a danger to my country. When do people say, you know what, maybe I need to vote a little different?
Yeah. And those of us who are like, I'm in the Midwest, or who are kind of far from the border, we have to not have our heads in the sand.
Actually, I think it might've been Iowa or maybe North Dakota, South Dakota, one of the Dakotas, but maybe Iowa. I had some guys come down here that were state legislators.
Did you?
And they asked to have me take them to the border. And they said, we're starting to see a little bit coming into our state now.
Yeah, we are.
They said, we want to be on top of this. We want to know what's happening firsthand. And I took them to the border, showed them around, showed them some illegals jumping the fence, and then took them out for lunch and answered their questions. So at least some of those states are starting to realize, like, this will, if not now, will impact us sooner or later.
Right.
So I don't like to espouse any political party. I don't want to espouse candidates. I just say I don't endorse anybody, but you make your own choice.
Make your own choice. What have we seen and what are we currently seeing? Right.
I mean, I know what worked and who it worked. And now I know under this administration and maybe the next one, Kamala Harris wins, it's not going to get better. And so
and what do we do if you're already down over 3,000 border agents?
Yes.
And who's going to sign up to be on the border, to be a border agent? And like, this keeps happening.
Tough time.
We'll just lose most of the agents, and then it's just a free for all.
Yeah. And again, they're not doing what they want to do, which is enforce the law, apprehend people, set them up for possibly prison, detention time, or removing them.
Right.
And we're just not doing that. And we allow people to come in under asylum with Trump. They just had to wait in Mexico, wait their turn. And you'll have here. We've actually put a protocol together where we would have not agents, but supervisory agents would get training, because the law is very clear that any immigration officer, which is technically what we are, can do asylum hearings.
Oh.
So we know they'll lie to us to our face right there. I mean, I had CNN at the border, and there was two guys sitting there, and I said, see, they're going to claim asylum. And I went up to him, spoke, and I wasn't in uniform. And then the news crew came up, and I spoke to the guys in Spanish, and he said, what are you coming here for? And the guy said, for jobs and stuff, man. And I said, and I told the CNN guy, so if you didn't understand Spanish, he said he's coming here for a job. He's claiming asylum. I said, when he gets to the station, he's going to say gang violence or whatever. But quite often at the first, they're truthful.
Right.
And so if you had a supervised agent come and talk to them while they're being processed and make the adjudication right then and there, no, you're not eligible for asylum. We're sending you back to Mexico. But they don't want to do that. So, because they know these guys won't show up and you'll never see them again.
Never see them again. Yeah.
And you don't know what their status is. You don't know what look, my wife, she also worked for the county, and she worked in social services. And she said that she saw a big difference between her parents came here, and they came here to work hard.
Yeah. And
she said the first thing now, people come in, I know they're here illegally. She said that they're demanding their social security. They're demanding this. And she said, they had this elderly guy, and I said, you just came over like today? And he said, I came over yesterday. And you're demanding social security that you never paid into.
Right.
You're demanding, SSI and this and that. So there's not all, trust me, I know there's a lot that are coming to work. I get that.
Sure.
And they want to keep their noses clean. Okay.
Right.
But there's a tremendous amount that if they're not criminals, they're still trying to game the system. They want free stuff.
They want free stuff. Yeah. I work hard and I don't want them to have free stuff.
Denver, the mayor cut their budget by $60 million for police and fire and gave it to illegals. And the people apparently okay with that. The city of New York is spending billions on illegals. They don't have enough cops. So, again, you pick and choose. I do notice, and I think a lot of people did, that when they were dumped, 50 of them were dumped in Martha's Vineyard.
Those people were not happy.
Within a day, the Massachusetts National Guard came and removed them all.
Right.
Hey, you got big mansions. Don't you have extra rooms? Put them up in your house. They
Right.
didn't want them even in their community. So it's a lot of hypocrisy on the left, the liberals. None of this is good for our country. None of it.
None of it.
And I'm not going back. Oh, I want to go back to the 50s. Women didn't have the rights for this. I'm not trying to do any of that.
We're
I
just
just want a
protecting
country
our
that was safe.
borders. Yeah.
A country that's safer. There's less crime. There's less homes. They say there's a housing shortage. Okay, I'll buy that. I mean, my house was just appraised for an ungodly amount of money that I find unbelievable.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's not that great of a house, but I live over a canyon, which is rare in San Diego. I have a nice view. But there's a housing shortage. Okay, got it. You just allowed, at the minimum, again, it's way out of that, but you just allowed 10 million people in.
Right.
But you already don't have enough houses.
Right.
Where are you going to put it? So California passed a law now.
More homeless people.
Yes. And California just passed a law now that somebody can sell their house like me, and they could tear it down and put up a building on a residential street with up to 13 apartments. So, okay. But you just let over 10 million people in, and you don't have enough houses for the people that are here already.
Right.
And the homeless is not just, well, I mean, like they kicked out when this started, they kicked out homeless out of a shelter, homeless Americans, vets and stuff like that.
Right.
Migrants, illegals in there. So there was a little pushback, but again, people just felt the homeless advocates just kept their mouth shut because, it's illegal. So can't speak about that. There's whole areas out here in San Diego I won't take my wife to anymore because not only is there a ton of homeless and crime, but the homeless are very belligerent.
Sure.
And you have to literally walk out in the street into traffic to walk around them because they won't get out of the way. So you're just going to see more of that. Again, do we have our own societal problems? Yes, let's try to fix them and make them better and mitigate them. But you're just adding more to it. Crime's going through the roof, and you're allowing known gangbangers from Trento or Ottawa and other gangs, MS-13, 18, all that, to come here.
Yeah.
So you're adding to it. And again, saying, oh, well, Chris, we're going to have homicides anyway. Right. So if we have 50 homicides and now we add another 50, those 50 people that would still be alive, the second group of 50, because illegals killed them. And if we didn't let them here, they'd be alive. So you're basically saying you're minimizing this pain and suffering that person went through and their families are going through because your political agenda.
Your political agenda, you're prioritizing illegal aliens over your own citizens. And that's never okay. It's never okay.
If you get any pushback by any of your viewers and they say, well, the asylum seekers, that's not illegal. Most of them jump the fence because they don't wait in line at the port of entry. If you jump the fence, even if you cut asylum, you are still breaking the law. 8 USC, 8 United States Code 1325, entry without inspection. They won't get prosecuted for it, but they are technically and legally breaking the law. So if anybody wants to push back on that and say, oh, well, Chris, you're lumping them all as legal aliens. If they jump the fence in any way, shape, or form, don't care if they claim asylum, they still broke the law.
Right.
They entered without inspection. And a lot of them don't want to wait in line at all at the border, at the ports of entry. And we're talking about, okay, several hours, but they don't even want to do this, so they'll just jump the fence. They can use CBP-1, which is another bullshit thing where you can sign up on this app, the Customs Border Protection, and it gives you time and place to come to the port of entry, and you're not counted as here illegally. So those numbers aren't. So again, I talked about how
the numbers are all skewed. Yeah.
Yeah. So those hundreds of thousands that are coming on CBP-1, which they had to stop because their own inspector general said, wow, we're finding the same name and addresses hundreds and hundreds of times. So you're obviously not vetting them properly. So they had to shut it down. They restarted it within the last month.
Right.
I'm sure it's perfect now. So again, you won't see those numbers in the numbers that are showing as apprehensions and illegals because they came here legally through the port of entry, asking for some. And again, they're just never going to show up. So anyway, it's out of control. If anybody says it's not, they're welcome to come out here, look me up. I will take them down to the border. I will show them what's going on, and you can then argue with yourself about that. I can show firsthand. And even the numbers that this administration give out are still horrible. So, all right, you want to say 10 million? I know it's probably about 14, 15 million, but you want to say 10 million?
Still bad.
Yeah.
So
we were down to low 100,000s or so, especially the last years of Trump's administration per year. Yeah. And so now we're like over 2 million a year.
Yeah.
So
you can't prevent everybody from coming over. I mean, I wouldn't even expect that, but
just like the police can't stop all crime, but you're there to mitigate it and minimize
it. So it's far cry 10 million down to,
well, in 3.5 years. So you were talking about over 2 million a year as opposed to maybe 300 and some thousand a year. So so how much tenfold that is or whatever it is increased. So again, I have people that'll argue saying, oh, well, it still happened under Trump. Right. So which would you rather, 300,000 or 10 million or 2 million a year?
Right.
So
I've heard that a lot.
It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
So we knew it worked. We knew it worked on the border.
We weren't missing 350,000 kids either.
Yeah, 360.
300,000 kids.
Yeah, what's 10,000?
What's 10,000 kids, Chris? What's 10,000?
Some little kids. So it's horrible. I hate it. Again, I'm a Christian. I'm not a good one. I need to work at it, and I generally say that with all humility. It's just horrifying to me, not only as a Christian but as a human being, that we're allowing
And
this
as a U.S. citizen, yeah.
And I don't understand
Understand
why people. And I have friends, and I don't disown friendships, lightly, but I have friends that are just don't believe that this is happening.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to tell them. Even my stepmom, I don't think she believes it's really happening. And I just wish I could say, guys, it truly is. I get nothing out of this. You're not paying me to speak.
No, I'm not paying you. I'm not getting paid for anything.
No.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is I get nothing out of this. The only reason I'm spending part of my day with you, and you're actually my second media appearance today, is because I truly believe this is important to get this message out. And again, I understand there's other things in your life, and you might be pro-abortion. I get it. But if this is stuff that bothers you, if you truly think that this is bad for the country, it's bad for your family, it's bad for your kids, it's bad for society on all different levels, the money we're spending. We had a thing out here, there's a congressman from Texas came out, well-known congressman. He came out and he wanted to meet with a panel of us, and I was invited to be on it, about what's going on in the border. And two of them were Board of Education people. And when they could speak freely, there was no press, there was no people. Yeah. They said that their school districts are going under. And they gave an example. The one guy, he was a principal, and I think he was also on the school board. He said it costs normally out here $23,000 a year to educate a child in my school district. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm paying $60,000 to $65,000 for these people that are coming because I don't have anybody that speaks their language. I have to try to find someone who speaks, Congolese or whatever. Right. I don't have. And he said, so we're going to go bankrupt. He said, we can't afford it. So there's one level. Your kid's education is going to be impacted. You dump a bunch of people in there that don't speak any English. And we're not even talking Spanish now. We're talking about, some weird dialect from somewhere or some weird language. I shouldn't say weird. It's not weird, but it's a language we don't know.
Right.
And all that good luck hiring a bilingual teacher who speaks Spanish and English, great. But that doesn't help you with somebody who's, again, from Yemen. And we've got a lot of Yemenis and the Houthis and all that. So it doesn't help you. And so that's one other level that people want to think about. My wife, quick story, and I don't know how much time you have, but this is several years ago, or a few years ago. My wife's youngest son went to this high school down at the border, down in San Ysidro, part of San Diego. And he wanted to get in this elective course, and he was told there's no room. So my wife, I missed the first phone call where she called the school up, or the principal, or the Board of Ed, and she told them, I'm going to go to the media, and I'm going to protest because knowing let illegal aliens into the school. She says, you see the plates in front of the school, dropping the kids off. They're Baja, Mexico plates. You let them in. Their parents pay no money in taxes, no school taxes, nothing. You let them in. And now you're telling me my son doesn't have any room. And she said to them, and good luck trying to say I'm a racist because I was born in Mexico. So I'm going to run with this. So I was in the car with her driving, and her cell phone rang. It was the president of the school board. And we were unmarried at the time, and her last name. And he said, good news, we found space in the class. Don't have to worry about anything. Nothing needs to be done. You guys, you're good. And my wife said, yeah, I'm good. But that's what happens, that your priorities are people that are not citizens, that aren't from here, or haven't naturalized, over people that shouldn't be here to begin with. Right. We have finite resources. That's the bottom line is you can only tax people so much. We have finite resources. And if a school district saying we're looking at going bankrupt, there's a hospital in El Centro that went out of business because people that come here from other countries, they don't have doctors, and they go to the ER for everything. That's their doctor. Right. And so they don't get charged anything. And so the hospital went out of business. Sure. And now California has passed a law, Governor Newsom signed it, that illegals get free health care. So my wife said she's going to go down to Mexico, jump the fence, and say that she's illegal so she can get free health care. I have to pay a godly sum from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I still have to pay co-pays and deductibles. But if I was here illegal in California,
it would be free.
It's free.
It's free.
Again, so those doctors aren't working for free. The nurse, my mom was an RN for 30 some years. Yeah. She wouldn't be working for free. So who's paying them?
Right. We are.
You are. Yeah. So, if it's enlightened self-interest for your economics, for taxes, your kids go to school, or kids dying from fentanyl, people being raped, being abducted, murdered, any of that,
Yeah.
then you might want to really reevaluate who you want to elect.
Yeah.
So,
Chris, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking this time to
Laura, you let me
educate us,
ramble
to
on.
tell the truth to us. I really appreciate the truth.
It's
Anyway.
sad. I wish it was better.
Yeah, I wish it was better too. Like I told you in the beginning, I was excited to talk to you. Like, well, it's not an exciting topic. I'm like, I know, but we need to.
like when I do speaking engagements, Laurie, I tell them now, like a few years ago, I was telling you things are good on the border. Here's what we can do to make it better, but it's working. And now I tell people like, this is really going to be a pessimistic talk.
Yeah.
Because votes do matter.
Votes matter. Leadership matters. Yeah.
Laurie,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. God bless you.
Appreciate it. God bless you too. Bye-bye.